Here is the recap of the first season of Reacher. Jack Reacher arrives in a small town called Margrave and walks into the nearest diner. Suddenly, the police burst in and arrest him, accusing him of committing a murder. At the police station, he is processed by Officer Roscoe, who immediately guesses his innocence. Detective Finlay tells the protagonist that in the cornfield at night someone killed a man with a silenced gun and then mutilated the corpse beyond recognition. Reacher says he didn't arrive here until this morning and couldn't have been at the crime scene. He came to the city because this place was recommended by his older brother, whom he had not seen for a long time. It turns out Reacher was a former military man who headed a special unit that investigated various crimes in the army. He was damn good, but recently retired. Now the protagonist is traveling for his own pleasure. Detective Finlay needs to check this information, and Reacher is left in the police station for a while. There was a note in the dead man's shoe with a phone number of financier Hubble. Finlay and Roscoe go to see him. The man is visibly worried, and when he notices a black car standing nearby, he confesses to the murder. Detective immediately guesses that Hubble is lying. However, he has to be arrested and sent to jail. Finlay realizes that something is not clean here. He asks Reacher to talk to the financier while they are sent to the detention center for the night. However, it turns out that a dirty guard sent them to the block where dangerous criminals are serving their sentences. Reacher realizes that there is a reward for Hubble's head, and he easily kills a crowd of prisoners who attack them. The financier tells the protagonist that he works for a certain criminal organization. Apparently, they suspected that he blabbed, and now want to get rid of him. The next day, the men are released from prison and for lack of evidence against them, released. Later, Reacher learns that the police found a second body in the same field where the first body, and the detective asks the protagonist for help and leads him to the morgue. There, Reacher learns that the first deceased was his brother Joe. Now, this case for the protagonist became personal, and he decided to find out the truth by all means. The cops discover that someone has killed the chief of police, and in a very brutal way. They nailed him to the wall, cut off his genitals, and shoved them down his throat. Reacher realizes that it is the same crime syndicate with which Hubble was connected, as he told something similar. He and Roscoe go to see the financier, but his wife Charlie reports that he has disappeared somewhere. The protagonists realize that he is most likely dead, and since his family is now in danger, they decide to hide them. Finlay contacts his friend Picard, an FBI agent. He hides Hubble's wife and children in a cabin somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Meanwhile, the mayor of the town makes himself chief of police and orders all employees to search for the killer. Finlay and Roscoe suspect that the mayor may not be clean, as he is clearly leading them down the wrong path. We also get to know the businessman Kleiner. A few years ago, his family came to this godforsaken town and invested a lot of money here. After that, Margrave began to prosper. Kleiner Sr. has two nephews, Kleiner Jr. and Dawson, who are clearly a bit of a jackass. Reacher decides to interrogate the same guard who sent them to the common block in the prison. When he arrives, he falls into a trap where two South American mercenaries are waiting for him. Reacher manages to escape and returns to the police station, where he shares his guesses with Finlay and Roscoe. It turns out that his dead brother Joe worked in the Secret Service and investigated financial crimes. Most likely he found in Margrave criminal organization, and apparently they have something to do with South America. At night, Roscoe and Reacher go to a bar, where they have a good time and even begin to feel sympathy for each other. In the morning, they drive up to Roscoe's house and realize that someone broke in, apparently trying to kill the girl. Meanwhile, the main characters get in touch with a colleague of Reacher's dead brother. From her, they learn that Joe came on the trail of the largest crime syndicate, engaged in the creation of fake banknotes. Reacher wants to get the documents on which his brother worked and agrees with the woman to meet in person in a couple of days. That night, Reacher again goes in search of the guard from the prison, but he is followed by hired assassins. Eventually, the protagonist kills them and finds the body of the guard in their trunk. Finlay helps to get rid of the bodies, and Roscoe takes an interest in Reacher's past. It turns out he has a note in his file that he killed civilians, but in fact the man then executed rapists. After everything happens, Roscoe and Reacher spend the night in a hotel and sleep with each other. By this time, the police learn the name of the second man killed in the field. It turns out to be some truck driver. The protagonists go to his house and learn from his wife that he often brought some boxes of air conditioners to the garage, but they turned out to be empty. The puzzle begins to take shape. Reacher assumes that the counterfeit money was brought from South America to Margrave, where there was a distribution center. The Kleiner family seemed too suspicious to Reacher, and apparently they are in charge of storing and sending the money to buyers. FBI agent Picard gets information about a burned-out car in a cornfield, and Reacher guesses that it was his brother's vehicle. This car was spotted outside the hotel, which means there may be evidence against the crime syndicate left behind by Joe. Reacher and Roscoe head there, but they are overtaken by bandits. They steal all the documents, but throw away the briefcase. Reacher knows his brother well, so he finds a secret compartment in it, and a note with information that is still unclear. At this moment, they are attacked by thugs, but the protagonists manage to kill them. Soon Finlay, Reacher, and Roscoe meet and try to figure out what names and phone numbers are in Joe's note. They get through to them and realize that they are professors in a very narrow field related to finance. However, they are all at a conference in another country and will be unavailable for several days. Reacher calls Neagley, his old co-worker, who is now working as a private investigator. He asks for her help, and she starts digging. The main characters go to meet a colleague, Joe, with whom they agree to meet in person. However, she does not go up the escalator, and Reacher realizes that something is wrong. He finds her corpse in the subway tunnel, and all the documents are once again taken by someone. Back in Margrave, Reacher sees Roscoe's car scribbled with insults and realizes that the junior Kleiners did it. He finds them and beats them up, but they don't press charges as they have their own snouts in the fire. However, the mayor of the city, who now runs the police, fires Roscoe. Soon the girl begins to suspect that the suicide of her mentor several years ago was probably staged. Together with Reacher, they search his leftover stuff and find a key. It leads to old records that again indicate that Margrave is a distribution center for counterfeit money, but there is no concrete evidence. Roscoe also learns that it was the town's mayor who murdered her mentor and faked her suicide. Realizing that Roscoe is now in danger, she is sent to guard Hubbell's family in the woods, replacing Agent Picard. Reacher meets with his former co-worker Neagley, and together they learn the following information. It turns out the Kleiner family built a chemical plant in Memphis a few years ago that polluted a local river. When some FBI agents started checking it out, he was killed and the investigation stalled. At this time in Margrave, Finlay decides to get evidence against the Kleiners and sneaks into their office, but finds the corpse of Kleiner Sr. there. Protagonists assume that the South American cartel begins to panic and kills everyone who interferes with business. Finlay and Reacher decide to follow the Kleiners' trucks. However, they discover that an empty truck has departed from their warehouse, which is very strange. Reacher soon learns that one of the professors communicating with his brother has been killed, and he urgently meets with the second one. He saves her from the assassin, and she tells the man that it is incredibly difficult to counterfeit money nowadays. It turns out that everything can be forged except the paper itself, which means that the villains need somewhere to take it. Meanwhile, Roscoe is guarding the Hubbell family and notices movement in the woods. They escape from the assassins and don't realize how they were able to find them. Soon the woman reveals that she always knew where her husband worked. It turns out a few years ago, Kleiner came to him and offered him a high-paying job. However, it was a setup, and Kleiner made sure Hubbell couldn't refuse, and if he went to the police, he would be executed in the most brutal way possible. Meanwhile, back in Margrave, Reacher decides to lure the mercenaries out and ambushes them, killing Dawson, the nephew of Kleiner Sr. After this, the protagonist finally gets a clue. He figures out where the villains get the paper for the money. It turns out they take old small-denomination banknotes and use chemicals to erase the ink from them. These are the chemicals that the Kleiner family used to make in Memphis. So Margrave's not a distribution center. It's where they make these counterfeit banknotes. The only thing left to do is get the evidence, which is the money itself. Reacher remembers the truck driver who had empty boxes of money in his garage. Eventually, the protagonist guesses that the man took the money not to his home, but to his parents. Together with Finlay, they find the fake bills. but then they are caught by surprise by the bad guys. It turns out that Agent Picard works for them, and it is thanks to him that the bandits have always been one step ahead. We learn that Kleiner Jr. killed his father because he was preventing his nephew from expanding. The man reveals that he captured Roscoe with Hubble's family, but promises to spare the children if Reacher is brought to him by Hubble himself, who turns out to have escaped somewhere. The protagonist eventually finds him, frees Finlay, and together with Neagley, they decide to kill all the villains personally. After a short battle, the entire criminal gang is killed and the production burns down. Soon things finally settle down in the city. Reacher says goodbye to his new friends and goes wherever he wants to go. This is the end of the first season. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the like button. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.